Tie that down firmly. You've now got 3 pieces at the front. You can either use all 3 or you can just use the original 2 you did. But to be honest with you, I think it looks better with 3. Use a bit more depth on the tail. Bring it right down, bring it over the back. Tie it down securely with the wire. At this point in time you can, yes it is nice time. 3 turns with your wire. Bring it up at nice even turns up the body. You can now get rid of your wire in the usual way with wiggling it about. All you've got to do now is to build up a nice even head. With your black dyeing silk. Making sure that everything at this end is going to be nice and secure. Finish it off with the normal double half hitches. 1, 2, bring it backwards nice and gently, and again. This is a fly which is not only good for trout. You can actually use it if you go fishing for chub on the rivers. It's particularly good for that. At this point in time, just get hold of the 3 strands that you've got. Give it about ½ an inch or 1.5 centimeters. And pull it out. That is all the hard work done. The thing about this fly, there's absolutely no moving parts. 2 or 3 turns, all we need. And tie it down nice and securely, nice and neat, tight up to the body. There we go. Go back up to the head of the fly and we'll tie in the wire. This one we're tying silver wire in addition to the holographic tinsel. This is just to strengthen the holographic. Back up to the head again. Holographic tied in nice and firm. Run it down. There we go. It does take quite a lot because, as you probably will appreciate, sedges are quite big flies. Tying this one as size 8 hook. It's very small for a size 8 on this make, but you can go right down to size 14 using exactly the same system all the way through. Next material we're using, this is dapping floss, which is a form of antron. Double it up. Now you want to make sure that you keep it on the top of the hook, right up to the arm, nice and tight. We're now going to put in another piece. Because it's a big hook, you need a big wing. So this next piece has a dual purpose. Not only are we going to use it for the body, but we'll end up using it for the wing as well. We're going to use one of these hackles. You can see a brown hackle. Got a little bit of beeswax there, a little spot of bother with the beeswax earlier. Melted it on the radiator. Very careless. Snip off this end. Down to the tail. The tail, we're going to use marabou. We're doing olive today. Tear off a nice generous slip wet your finger ends, put it up, put it down so. Hold it firm while you tie it in. Once you've got it secure, snip off the surface. You'll find when it's wet, it does tend to stick to your scissors a little bit. Bind that down securely. Come back. Going to use a little bit of glitter on the tail on this one. We get 2 strands. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can tie it in with that end. Very similar, different part of the body, but tied with a yellow body. Another very good killing pattern. And there you have your partisan orange. All that's required is a touch of varnish on the head, but I've shown you how to do that. But just in case you've forgotten, I'll show you how to do it again. One little tap. There we are. Fly done. And now let's get started with the Gremlins Glory. We're going to use olive tying silk this time, and the hackle we'll be using is a cock hackle. You can see the fairly distinctive black band down the middle. That is a Gremlins hackle. Tie it in nice and firm. A bit of that. Now at this stage, we'll tie in the rib. I'm going to do the rib as usual with gold wire. Well, it's brass wire really, we can kill ourselves as gold. All the way in, right the way down the body. Nice, tight, touching turns to just above the barb of the hook. Nice, tight, touching turns all the way back up again. This pattern has been around for many, many years. It was very, very popular in the early time with the old North Country spider fishers. This, together with the March Brown and the Snipe and Purple, were always the first 3 on the hook at the beginning of the trout season. Tied the rib in. A bit of the excess, just a few turns to tidy it down. Get a hold of the point of the hackle. We're going to do 3-4 turns, and then back up again. Gives the holographic quite a lot more depth, as well as making it more durable. Snip that off so it's out of the way. Now we'll just use the wire rib just as a strengthener. Don't have to do this on anti-reverse because you've gone up and down the body with the holographic. Hold your hook firm, just do the little wiggles. At this point in time, as you feel your tail's a little long and untidy, you can just pull it and snip it and it flares out. The next part is the black marabou dies on each side, hence the name the Boobie. It looks like our friend Dolly Parton by the time we've finished. So we get a good bed of silk. Get something that the polythene or the foam will actually anchor onto. Gives a little, normally you give a touch of varnish, and once you've got the head put down, you would leave it to set for a while. For the purpose of the exercise, we can't really do that today, which makes it a little bit more difficult. The secret of a neat booby head is to keep the silk parallel to the hook all the time. Every now and again, bind it back and front to create an anchor. We're doing, as I say, we do it in orange today. The colours which you can use for making these boobies are only limited by your imagination. The actual booby tube, as I like to call it, comes with a selection of colours, like so. Pays your money and takes your choice. We're doing an all orange version today. I like to call it my whiskey booby, after the traditional bright orange whiskey fly. We tie in the tail in the normal way. We do the shuttlecock as we've had in the past. Don't forget to give a little loop under the tail. Just don't say it's 100% effective, but it does tend to stop the marabou twisting under the tail. Wet your finger ends. And I've actually, this is egg yarn. It comes in big spools or hanks, and I've cut them all conveniently to lengths of that. We're going to use 4 lengths of that to make this fly. We're going to put it in the middle of the hook. We're going to put the far side, we're going to try to get it all around the hook. That's nicely gone underneath. 2 turns to hold it. Try to do one alongside it. 2 turns. Then we'll have a little change of colour. I can see you thinking, what on earth is this? And that's what I thought as well the first time. I had to do this from a book, so you can imagine how weird that sounded, or read. So we've now got all the equivalent of like 8 legs. Well, I'm struggling now, I've lost my frame. There we are. I want to try to keep your tying bit right along the middle, tight. Tight in tight. And at this point in time, we're going to tie that off. Double half hitch as usual. I usually do 3 double half hitches on this, and I don't bother with any varnish on this one, because you want total freedom on this egg yarn. We're going to make that, believe it or not, to look like a salmon fly, a salmon egg, which is how it started its life. Cut off the thread. Now what we do, take these one at a time, pull it, find it halfway, cut it, pull it, halfway, cut it, pull it, halfway, cut it, pull it, cut it, pull it, cut it. Tie it in. Thread back up to the eye. This part isn't on his pattern, but adds a little bit more buoyancy to it and bulks the thorax out. The hackle. Could say a naughty word there. in nice and securely. Take off the end. Take your thread right the way back to the joint, thorax and the back end of the body. Cut off the stuff on the top. Bring this over as the wing. Tie it down securely. You want your wing to come well to the back, and then loop it round. This is probably the easiest way, particularly when it's wet. Get rid of all your surplus again. A little bits flying around today. It's 5 weeks since I've tied my last fly till today. Been out swanning around in New Zealand, and the reason I'm doing this fly is I had about 4 good rainbows, about 3 to 3.5 pounds each on one of these. Got me quite excited on the fly again. So there we have the marabou on the tail, the chenille for the body. The rib, we're going to do gold braid, like so. Tie that in nice and firmly up the body. Almost to the head. With the marabou, with this chenille, it does tend to be a little bit on the soft side. So to stop it fraying as you're tying it in, good idea to use your hackle pliers. You can get a good firm turn on your chenille without damaging it, doing it this way. And we go. Tie it off. There we go. At this point in time, we're going to put in the hackle. Nice olive hackle. This one is a cock hackle. If you can get a hold of what I call a henny cock hackle, it's better because it's softer, but I'm afraid the only ones I've got left at the moment are these standard cock hackles. This one is held in firmly. Secure your hackle at the point. A couple of turns at the head. Now it's a nice long hackle. I'm going to wind it down the body in open turns towards the tail. Now we get the gold. Bring it from underneath. That's secured. You've now secured with, this is stainless steel wire, but any good strong silver wire will do it. We now take the 2 strands that we've brought back. Doesn't matter which one you zap. You make the 2 into 1. Now, as you're winding it round, untwist it so that it lies flat. And as you progress up the body, unwind it less. What you're wanting to try and do is to make it a bit fatter at the front and thin at the back. In other words, fish-shaped. Oops. Sorry. Things have moved on a little bit since then, and the popular one for doing the body now is copper lurex with a copper wire rib. I'm using this stuff called check body simply because I prefer it. And I've got a lot of it. It's a more durable body. I think it gives a little bit more sparkle, but it's not very easily obtained. it's tougher than Lurex. This is one of the deciding factors on using it. It builds up quite nicely. You can make the body as flat or as fat as you wish. Don't like it too thin, but don't like it too thick. That's about right. Tie the body in now. So we've got the peacock herald for the tail and the back. We've got the body check for the body, and we're using standard orange cock hackle for the hackle. 3 turns will be just about right. Tie the loop end in where you want it first, and the 2 loose ends you can then direct them where you want them. Don't forget to take the loop out, otherwise you'll get all kinds of funny turbulence once it's in the water. And we put the chenille fritz, call it what you like. Depends who it makes it as to what name they call it. But again, as I've stated in the past, tie it well in at the front, and that way you can give it a little bit of pressure when you're tying it on to get it nice and tight. Round, round, pull it back. 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 And then the last one, give a good tug, make sure it's nice and firm, and tie it down securely. Now what I would suggest at this point in time is you leave the dog end loose. Going to do a double half hitch. It's a little more difficult with a boobie because you're almost flying blind trying to hit the eye. Give it 3, just do a belt and braces job. Turn it over. Sorry, pardon. There you have a finished boobie. Once they're finished, what you need to do, or is recommended, you just clip around the edges, take the straight edge off it, do it on both sides exactly the same. I'm restricted to it on the vise. If I take it, I normally do this by holding it in the fly in my hand and doing it. The idea is just to take the edges off, otherwise they say, I've never experienced it, but the fly will spin in the water as you retrieve it if you don't take that off. All it needs now is... The original idea was that these flies should be very thinly dressed, and our forebears decided that they would actually use only half the feather, so they divided it off. Now I nearly did it the wrong way. Put the fly in, it will be that way on the hook. The bit you're going to take off is the bit on the other side. You tear it off like so. Tie it in at the root with the other one. Bring it down nice and nice steady turns. Snap off the stalk. I'm going to tie this as I would the traditional sizes. I'm not going to try to do it in proportion, go up and down the body to make the thickness of the fly to match the hook. It'll be a straight down, up and down, back up again, touching turns. Back up to the root of the hook. At this point in time we're going to use hackle pliers. I don't think we've mentioned these before. These are a very important item whenever you're doing hackles. They work by grasping the end of your hackle in the end, like so, and then turning it round the shank of the hook two, 3 times. Tie down, tie the end bit, there you are, that's nice. Now you can be very brave and try to snap it off, but sometimes you might just pull it through. Get your hook, your scissors, beg your pardon, just slide it up and do that. Don't cut with the scissors because you might just damage the hackles. That's the fly finished. All I've got to do now is tie it off. Doesn't take very long at all, does it? Now this particular fly, this is the partridge in orange. As I say, it's the first fly I ever tied. A very popular alternative to it is a yellow body with the brown hackle, or on another valuable feather on the partridge is the grey hackle. Whoops, that was a bit remiss of me, a little bit heavy-handed. These are very old silks I'm using at the moment. They're a little fragile. Another alternative is the grey partridge hackle, which is very dry, and drying it off, you've got to use the proper tanned skin, otherwise it just cracks up on you. And here we go with today's fly, the minke. We're going to use a long shank 8 hook today. For these you can use 6, 8s or 10s. On a lot of the smaller trout waters, 10 is probably a favourite. On the bigger waters, particularly when they're hitting the fry, the size 6 is favourite. We start by tying. You'll say, what on earth are you doing with 4 beads on there like that? Very good reason. It's easy to put it on. I like to do things the easy way. It's easier to put 4 on than 2. Got it started, so now I'll make the 4 2, just a pair of clippers. There we go. At this point in time, I'm going to move the bead upside down, so the weight is on the lower side of the hook. You want all your weight on your flies on the underside, otherwise your fly will try to swim upside down. That seems quite firm at that. Just take the silk down. Don't take it past the straight. Don't try going as far as the curve. Otherwise you'll find the tail not lying very well. So we go right back down to the end. And at this point in time, we'll put in our mink. This is our mink. You want roughly ½ an inch of your leather showing, hanging over the edge. So separate the 2 halves like that, like so. Now it seems a bit awful, but what you've got to do, and there's nothing beats a bit of spit, it softens the leather, bends round the hook easier, and anchors the line. Leave the tail out for the more, we'll deal with that at the end of the day. Now we're going to use copper wire for the rib. This is a bit thicker than what you might normally use, but it's a fairly substantial fly. Just tag this in at the back of the lead wire and bring it back up to near to the head. When we actually use the peacock herl on a fly as big as this, you might think it's a bit excessive, but you are going to need 5 strands. Trim off both ends. Like so, so all your strands are even. When you tie it in with the thin end, the pointed bits, and there. Now this time, we're going to include the thread in with the herl when we wrap it up the hook. Strengthens the herl. Just does tend to make it a little bit neater. Tie off the peacock herl with a couple of turns just to bind it down. Cut it off. Now we're going to bring the copper wire. I'm going to do it the opposite way on. Fairly wide ribbing on it. I would like to give a couple of little turns at the head when I finish. Tie that down securely. Do the normal little wiggly bit. The hackle we're going to use can be a dark one like this, it could be a pale brown. I've even used orange. Or, daft as it may seem, even brown partridge can be effective. It's supposed to imitate the legs of the caddisfly, which is what this pattern represents. Put the hackle pliers on, start and just wind it forward. 3 turns should be enough.